Good evening. Today is Tuesday, September 8th. This is the regular meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. Can I have an approval of the motion to approve the minutes of the August 25th, 2020 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry, any changes? All those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 31st, 2020 special meeting board work session?
So moved.
Second.
Any changes, corrections? All those in favor? Okay, now we'll have a report from the superintendent.
Today was a great day for the district. So we brought our faculty and staff back for the first time since March, which is a tremendous feat, and there was a lot of positivity. Of course, there were some inherent anxieties that came with that, but it was really a fantastic day to be together. I was able to visit both buildings, so I went over and I got to see firsthand the teachers in the rooms at CLS, which was really, really great. There's a lot of positivity, a lot of can-do attitude, and I think there's some tremendous excitement. I visited each one of the kindergarten rooms, and each one is different, which makes them special. But there's a lot of care and love, and I think, despite the circumstances, the students are going to be walking into a place where they feel very celebrated. And I know that the teachers have put in a lot of work to make sure the remote students are still connected. Their names are still in the classroom, which I love. So there's been a lot of care in detail. And in this building, as you walked in, you probably noticed the taping went down. There's tape on the hallways. There's a lot more of that still to be added. But it was really good to check in with all the teachers. I kept making rounds, and there's a lot of a lot of questions, obviously still, particularly with how we manage the remote and the in-person and what the expectations are. The remote learning planning group did do curriculum work over the summer, and they issued a very comprehensive list of common expectations. So there will be common approaches that we're using system-wide, which is going to be a tremendous improvement from the spring. And not only for the teachers, but also for students, where we're going to have expectations that they log in on the morning on a daily basis. They're going to be communicating solely through Canvas, not email and Canvas, so there will be less of that kind of missed guidance. And there's been a lot of clarity with teachers about the expectations for the amount of work, so that it'll be consistent across that, and the experience will be of quality regardless of the model that a family or individual student is selecting. The best part of the day, though, was hosting 2 student-focused town halls. So, pretty ambitious. First day back with the faculty and staff, a board meeting, and the 2 town halls. But it was important that we got that in there. I wanted to do that before the students came, just to see their faces. They were very different. The middle school session, many of the students did come on. They were on their devices. They had some, really like their questions that they're wondering about. We talked about lockers and backpacks, and we went through the schedule, what it will be like. And I did explain, it's going to, until you experience it, there are going to be some challenges understanding like how all that time comes out, but it was a really nice connection. The high school session, I think, was fantastic. Mr. Kemnister and Ms. Fountain joined me for the middle school one, and then Dr. Davenport joined me for the high school one. We fielded questions from the students. We also went through all of that. It was a very positive discussion, and I know that the students are excited for the school year to begin. I think they're really happy to hear about all of the things that have occurred. I know they're excited that we got the tents. They're actually really excited that the nurses' space. There's multiple rooms. They were really wondering about all of those things, which I thought was good to hear what they're wondering about and what made them feel better. And we did convey to them that if we want schools to remain open, we have to work together. That's the same message I've given to the parents. Like, we actually have to do the work. We have to keep the distance. We have to keep the masks. Because if we have a group of students congregating in a big mosh pit before school starts, it's going to jeopardize our ability to remain open. We made that point clear. It was positively delivered, but it was very crystal clear about our expectations there. And it was just, as a school person, to see kids finally, it was really great. And so it's all really, the planning is coming to fruition, and I'm just personally very proud of us for all of the thinking and all of the confidence that the board has had in the plan throughout the process, and we're just really eager to keep going with it. And that's my report.
Anybody have any questions? I don't have any questions. I thought this morning was great. It was so nice to see all the staff, and we can't thank you enough for, I mean, many people helped you with this planning, but you have put in so much work, and it's exciting that it's happening now. All right, public comment. Seeing none, we're going to move on to our reports and discussion, and first up from Duchess BOCES, we have Dr. Richard Hooley.
Thank you all very much. Nice work, Whitney. The mic is working beautifully. She was working hard to get that to happen, so she was successful. I'd like to first introduce one of our board members from Duchess BOCES. This is Mr. Gully Stanford. Some of you know Gully. And he just said, I'd like to go around and visit at some of these board meetings where I come and kind of update you on what's going on at Duchess BOCES. So the first order of business I have to take care of today is, in the time of COVID, the Association of Superintendents in Dutchess County like to do something for retiring superintendents, in this case Joe. And so we were really hamstrung because we couldn't really go see people or do anything. What we did instead was we asked each of the retiring superintendents to give us the name of a book and a library where they would like that book placed. And our communications department made book plates. You can take a look at this. I'm going to give it to Whitney. And this book that Joe asked for is called American Dreamer, subtitled Memoir of a Peace Corps Volunteer in Central America and Beyond, and it's by David Taylor Ives, who is, I believe, a personal friend of Joe's, and he wants this put in the high school library. So I'm going to deliver that to Whitney and ask her to take care of that, for me. But really, this is just a brief opportunity to give you some quick updates on Duchess BOCES. So first of all, if you haven't driven by, and you do drive by, it is a moonscape. And I know Albert was there maybe a month and a half ago, and it was bad then. So in some very weird way, going hybrid is actually a boon to us because we're a little worried about parking. There's a lot, almost $3 million of the $36 million was moving land and regrading. So we are in the midst of that right now. But we're managing fine, and we have had our staff back, and we start full hybrid on next Monday. So do drive by and take a look, but I wouldn't come on campus if you can avoid it. Also, I would just like to talk to you about some of the personnel things that have happened for us, and some of these impact school districts. There's a new law about 2D compliance having to do with third-party vendors that contain student information. And we have hired a woman by the name of Carol Matthews, who will be our data privacy specialist, and that's actually a shared position with a couple of districts. So that's exciting because I think that's a new position and kind of hard to fill. We also have a gentleman named Terrence McKiernan. He is our new science specialist in educational resources. Educational resources is our professional development arm. So it seems like every BOCES has a different name, but if you hear ER, think of professional development. So he will work with teachers and administrators in the area of science. And as you know, those standards had changed a year or two ago, and people are still working their way through those. And then finally, we had a resignation of an assistant principal at CTI, the Career and Technical Institute, and we actually went through a lot of searches, and as you know, it got more increasingly difficult because you're doing all this on Zoom. But ultimately, the person that we hired was a woman by the name of Becky Green as our assistant principal at CTI. Becky has a long history with BOCES, worked in ER, the professional development arm, and knows BOCES backwards and forwards, and is a prior principal, so she will be a great support for us. So I'm sure some of your teachers probably know Becky Green, and it'll be nice to see that. The other thing I like to do at this meeting is to just inform you of how we partner for the service of your students. So I want to just talk about our special education population first, and At Rhinebeck, we have basically 4 programs involving students with disabilities. We have Beta, which is our alternative high school, and most of the students in that program have IEPs, but not all of them. We have SBC, which we call the Salt Point Center. That is our K-8 program, and those kids are really somewhere like 80% of those kids are students with disabilities. But we also have programs for behavior challenged kids that are not IEP related. Then we also have in-district classrooms. These are both these classrooms that are situated in school districts, but students from other districts attend there. So for example, we have a classroom at Red Hook that some of your students might go if it was a program that was helpful to them. They're not always geographical, but they are for students who need less restrictive environments. So sending them to Salt Point is more restrictive, obviously. So in-district placements are meeting the IEP. And then we have itinerant staff. These are often teachers of the deaf or teachers of visually impaired, and they come to school districts and provide those services because it's a savings to you not to have to hire one of those people specifically when we have them and they can make their meet the IEP requirements. So for Rhinebeck, you have actually 6 students in Beta in the alternative high school, and those are in different programs there. Some of them are IEP related, some of them are high school equivalency, and things like that. At SPC, you actually do not have any students located in our program. So that means that those kids are getting services here in district. You have 1 student in an in-district placement, and 2 students from Rhinebeck get itinerant services. In terms of CTI, this is the Career and Technical Institute, we have 2 Rhinebeck students in auto mechanics. We have 1 student in cosmetology, 1 student in culinary arts, 1 student in graphic design, 1 student in Introduction to Health Occupations. That leads to the Certified Nursing Assistant in the 2nd year. We have 2 students in small engine repair, 2 students in TV and video production, and 1 student in welding for a total of 11. So you have 9 students in our special ed programs and 11 students in our CTI programs. So with that, I'll let you get on with your meeting, but I'm certainly happy to stand here and answer any questions if you have some for us, for me.
Any questions?
You said at the beginning that you're starting remote. I'm sorry that I hadn't read up in advance.
It's okay.
But how are services being delivered are students going there at all, or?
Yeah, so we're hybrid, and so what that means is we're not doing exactly what yours is a very unique program and quite interesting and impressive, honestly. What we're doing is we have divided our classes into cohorts. We have 1 cohort going Monday and Tuesdays. Then Wednesdays is open for a variety of services, and then Thursday, Friday for the 2nd cohort. So if you are a student who is getting some of the related services, such as speech or occupational therapy like that, those may be part of that Wednesday when the building is less full. That day will also, though, include synchronous remote for all students on that day. And the nice thing about Wednesday is if things go smoothly and people begin to feel more comfortable and our numbers do not spike, we could use that as a 3-day-a-week in person. So it would look like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for cohort A this week, and then next week it could be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we've tried to build in some flexibility, and that's the plan as it stands right now, and our students come in Monday of next week, and we really spent this week and 2 days last week just making sure that we have a good structure and system for delivering instruction, whether it's remote or in person.
And are our students who are in CTI, for example, Are they coming here first and then going there, or are they doing it on opposite days?
I'm going to let Albert.
So Dr. Davenport has actually spoken, I mean, they've been working this out. What's unique about ours is we actually have an AM day and a PM day. So the way ours is designed is that students who attend CTI are actually not expected to be in Rhinebeck for those PM days. So it actually works out for them because they're essentially required here attendance for only one day a week for their AM or their PM. But they could actually attend more in person. They can kind of straddle the cohort, but it actually works out really well. We designed it with that in mind, actually, of creating a whole AM day. That's why we have periods 1 to 4 on Mondays and Thursdays, and periods 5 to 8 on Tuesdays and Fridays. So it actually supports our students who are attending in CTI. I know 2 of them opted for fully remote, and I think they're now going to do the in-person, so they can have 1 day a week like all other students for their in-person each week. But it fits nicely, actually, with...
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do any of the, I have one other question, sorry.
Trying to run away from the microphone.
Do any of the students have the option to go fully remote?
Yes,
They do.
yes, that still is an option, and we're just like you. That option has to be afforded, and it's a little bit of a challenge, but we're working through that.
Thank you so much for coming.
Sure, not at all. Thank you.
We'll move on to our board committee report, and we have the first report from our external and stakeholder relations. Matt, that's you.
Want to make sure this is on, okay? It seems like it is. Okay, so this was the initial meeting of the newly formed External and Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting. It, in some ways, replaced the former Communications Committee, although the roles may have additional roles there. The meeting began, Albert began by explaining that the vision for the committee is to foster positive and productive relationships among the board, the various groups in the schools, and the broader community. He noted the importance of improving communications between the district and the community with the goal of engaging all families. The committee then discussed the recent creation of the webpage, Rhinebeck Returns, and noted that it has helped improve communications as we head towards the start of the school year. The committee also discussed various ways social media could potentially be leveraged to disseminate information. The committee then discussed how the district is perceived by the broader community and discussed the importance of the district improving upon narrating and highlighting what does occur within the schools in order to better educate families about what is happening in the schools. The committee then discussed the importance of the district sending clear and concise email communications to families, and also noted that building-based Zoom town halls would be helpful for families and students. And of course, as Albert mentioned, there were 2 of those today. A discussion then ensued among the committee around various ways to encourage and promote community attendance at board meetings. As you can see, we have room for improvement here. The committee then talked about the board meeting agenda setting process with the idea of highlighting certain topics that might be of interest to the community, and also just perhaps setting a long-term calendar for the year on the board meeting agenda setting process, so that certain presentations that might be of interest to the community could be on the agendas in advance. The committee then discussed a number of goals and decided on 3 goals for the coming year. The first being to develop system-wide communication standards, both from the district and the board, maximize involvement and engagement through meaningful interaction with our community partners, and again, and as mentioned, increase community attendance at board meetings and examining the board meeting schedule and agendas. And that was it for the committee. It's next scheduled to meet on October 1st.
Questions? He's off to a good start. I think those are good goals. Then we'll move on to board self-evaluation. So last month, the board, for the first time since I've been on the board, did maybe 2, Mark, I don't know if we did one before then, but first time we've ever done a board self-evaluation. We used the SuperEval tool, And that is, has us look at 5 different standards. One is vision, leadership, and accountability. Then the next one is board governance and policy, communications and community relations, fiscal resources and staff recruitment and environment, and ethical leadership. So we went over those at our last meeting. I think combined, we felt like the board did the best job in ethical leadership. That was what our combined answer showed, and we could use a little more work in the vision, leadership, and accountability. I think that stemmed from, it talks a lot about using the vision and mission statement as we go about our work, and that's not something that we've typically consciously done, so I think that's why we scored ourselves lower there. The other thing that had come up was that every year we're supposed to reaffirm the code of ethics, and none of us could remember if we actually do that. I did look that up. We do actually adopt that every year, but I don't think we'd actually read it. So I pulled it up, and I sent it all to you this afternoon so we could actually read it. So that was the answer to that question. Did anybody else want to talk about anything from the?
Yeah, so you mentioned, wondering if we'd ever done it before. So I think we have done an evaluation in years past, quite a few years ago, but not to the formal extent that we did it this time. So I think it was really worthwhile to do it this way. And I think we found some areas that we could use improvement. So I think that's really good for us. So I hope we can work down that road to make those improvements.
Yeah, I think it was a positive experience going through the self-evaluation process. But one thing that came up for me, and maybe some of the other newer members, is that you were talking about how we don't use our vision and mission statements in our day-to-day thinking. And I think another thing that we could use more reconnecting to is understanding the CDEP. Since 4 of us weren't here for its involvement, maybe we could have a presentation or something that talks about how CDEP is a living project and what our role in it is, how we're doing on it. It's been several years now, so where are we with it? What needs to happen?
That makes sense. It's hard for us to use it as a guide if we don't, if at least 4 of us weren't even kind of ever heard anything about it besides, kind of it's on the website, read it. So I don't know, the best way, maybe we could talk about the best way we could do that going forward, bring that information to the board. We could talk about that. I think it was good that pretty much the board was on, we were all together in our thinking, there wasn't, we all kind of were thinking the same way. Thought that.
I would just say that I would just say that I think it's an excellent model for this culture of self-evaluation and holding ourselves accountable to our stated objectives and goals. I think all of it is such a healthy thing. So I feel like it's an excellent first foray into that. And I think it's a really good practice that we want everyone in the system to do, including students. We really want to create this culture of self-evaluation and thoughtfulness and holding true to our stated goals and all of that. I think it's a very healthy, great direction to go. And I just think it's wonderful that you're taking the lead with it.
It was an interesting process, I thank you, to actually look at how you're doing things and come up with some things maybe we weren't doing. So I thought it was a good process.
I will say, I was glad to see, sorry, I should have raised my hand. I was glad to see when I read the statement of ethics, the guidelines, I was like, oh, I think we do that. We didn't know what it was, but in terms of actual practicing, nothing stood out for me as a problem area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw it, I did email that Mark helped me, we got the actual document for everybody to see, with all the comments, because we couldn't see that when we were bringing it up, but so now everybody can look at the whole document. All right, if nobody else has anything else they want to talk about with that, we can move on to good news. I've already heard a lot of good news.
There are a bunch of tents up at Chancellor. They look great, so everything's coming together there.
Well, you can't say enough for our facilities, Sheldon and his crew. I mean, it's always amazing that you'll come in a week or two before school, and it doesn't seem possible that school is going to happen. And in a year when you have a capital project and everything else we're going through, it seemed even less likely that it would come together. And then, you know, just, I would say like magic, but it's not. It's the hard work of a lot of people. It happens, and everything looks really great, just really.
I think really good news is that the guidance office is open.
That is great news.
I know, from watching the board meetings, I know that is big news and it's great news.
The mystery is.
There's custom barriers up. I mean, that's an excellent model of how to do it right in terms of an office space that is safe. I think we've had an amazing investment, and the company was installing those today. So that space is up and running, and it's really a wonderful example.
Move on to old business. Do we have any old business? So, okay. Another opportunity for public comment. Seeing none. Any other? Mark?
I just want to mention that last Thursday was the first meeting of the Dutchess County School Boards Association for the year. Normally, we don't have a meeting in September because it's usually the first week of the school year, and everybody's, involved in getting schools open, and so there's really not a lot of attendance. So we didn't have it, but this year we were able to meet by Zoom, which is, because of the pandemic, is a popular way for people to meet. So we did meet by Zoom. We had, I think, 5 or 6 school districts of the 13 in attendance. Gully Stanford, who was here earlier, was on the meeting also. And I was a little disappointed that we didn't have more participation from the other school districts, but the topic of the meeting was really to just share what we're doing as far as reopening. And I want to thank Albert for attending the meeting also. And I have to say, after the meeting, I felt just, how proud I am of us because of all the work we've done, and there were still school districts talking about, they're still working on some of their planning before, opening this week. So just an incredible amount of work has been done here, and I'm so proud of all the stuff that we've done. And Albert was in the meeting, so he was able to, clarify some points about how we're reopening, and we got a lot of, positive feedback from other school districts about what we're doing. So it was really wonderful to have that experience last Thursday. So the next meeting is, the association meets the first Thursday of every month. So stay tuned for another. I think we're going to do the same topic next month and maybe a little bit more, but hopefully we'll hear from some of the other school districts that weren't there last Thursday. So we'll see what happens, and we'll have reports of how things are going at that point. So.
Mark, and anyone can come to that meeting, even though Mark is always there as the president. I mean, you're more than welcome to go. It's always good to connect with other board members from other schools and see what's going on, and they have some interesting topics. Usually she sends the agenda ahead of time with what the topics are going to be, what speakers or who will be there, so.
Actually, that's what I was going to ask. Is there an agenda that comes out ahead of time so we know what the subject of the day is, or something like that?
Yes, and there's going to be, we have some standard themes. One is contract negotiations. So we usually have one of the school attorneys. This year we're trying to get David Shaw, and they come and talk about what the trends are in contract negotiations and in other school districts, other regions. We're having a presentation kind of along the lines of social emotional wellness at an upcoming meeting, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the other themes are.
Advocacy, right? You do something with advocacy.
We usually try to do some advocacy. We have the governmental relations people come in from NYSBA one meeting a year to talk about, usually around budget time when the governor's budget comes out, to try to talk about what they think is going to happen up in Albany as far as the finalization of the state budget. So, of course, there's a lot going on in that area this year with potential budget cuts, and so we'll see what it comes of next year's budget.
Mark? Any other? The only, I think, is I should have asked you during your report, but could you just, as we won't meet again until the 22nd, can you just talk a little bit about what's happening with sports as far as you know today, is ever changing?
As of today, sports has been extremely complex. This question came up in both of the student meetings. The governor made an announcement that sports would be permitted, but they did not release updated guidance until very recently. I think actually Friday afternoon they released additional documentation, which there were still questions about. Some sports are able to do certain things, others are not. Some are allowed to practice, still not compete. And there's, they would expect like soccer players to wear masks while playing and things like that. There are some inherent challenges that all schools face in terms of creating access to the teams, because many schools that are fully remote would have to transport students to a common place to engage in that, or in a schedule like ours, when the school day ends at 12, teachers are still working until they have scheduled courses actually through the afternoon. So there are some complications there. The league makes a decision, and then the section makes a decision. And I can tell you the way that the decision-making process has been is there will not be a clear, as with everything, there will not be a clear guidance from NISVA, from the state organization. They will not make a clear statement of what is and isn't. The only thing that they've been clear on is that they canceled fall championships, so they've already done that. But there is a series of proposals that they've released, which would be starting the fall season later, and making it a little shorter, delaying the fall season to the spring, and starting with a winter season, then having a spring season, or then having a fall season in the spring, and then a spring season. So it compressed, starting on January 1st. And there's other models out there that are suggesting starting with winter sports with a full season starting in November. So, we have been looking at all of those, and within our county, there are different sections. So there are some Section 1 schools, some Section 9 schools. And I know Section 1 they're a little bit bigger schools. They've been talking more about that. I know Section 9 is meeting, I believe, tomorrow to make some formal decisions on that. And then once that decision is made, we will need to kind of regroup with our staff internally to see how we want to respond to the decision and what we can offer for students who really are motivated by and care most about athletics. None of it's going to be easy. I personally have some concerns. If you look at our gym space now, it's full of desks because we have to have spaces to spread kids out, because we have many kids if we're not using the tents. So if we are starting with the winter, we have basketball here. Basketball needs a gym, and it's indoors, and I don't know what the guidance will be. I think in a lot of ways, and this is my editorial, that they're delaying a decision until later. So to whatever extent we can provide some sort of activity, I think it would be worth us to be creative and consider and think about. We're not there until the section makes a final determination for the section.
So is the process, because there was something in the newspaper about it, but is the process that the section will make a decision and then each school still can make their own decision regardless of what the section says?
That is correct. That is correct. So there are some schools who have come out and said that they will offer off-season practices, but they have no one to compete against or no one to play with. So their off-season practices may include some intramural type things. All of the practice and intramurals will still be required to adhere to the regulations and the guidelines, and each sport has its own list of guidelines that they've released. But we will be able to make individual decisions. However, because it is interscholastic athletics, if you don't have schools to play against, complicating matters for us is our shared teams with Pine Plains, and what that means, because they're in a different learning model, I think, until October. So that's another additional challenge, because I don't know what decisions they make, and we're not pledged to make the same decisions. None of this, like all of our decisions, almost all of those decisions that we make are compromises, and we'll do the best that we can with our options.
One other question, sorry. The governor was talked about today, the schools have to report numbers to the dashboard, but we're not,
So,
like, what do they mean by
this-
that?
I
Because
will
we're
tell
not
you,
testing
and,
them.
and this is for the public record, we found out about this today, about a WebEx that was being put on at 1:30 today of all days, when all schools are just trying to exist, that we would have to go on, log into a dashboard. And I thought this would be a simple task. As I was watching the WebEx, I was like, okay, I just want to get this done. So I printed off our enrollment. I knew our teachers. I was ready to do it as the superintendent, because that's who's responsible for doing it. I go in, and it's per building. So you have to submit a separate survey per building. And it's not just a quick survey of like, what happened today? It's every day listing the number of students who were on site, the number of students who were remote, the number of faculty that was on site, the number of faculty that were remote, the number of positive cases that were in the district, the number of tests that occurred, the percent of those tests that were positive, which, by the way, we do not test, nor we're relying on people to tell us if we know that. It's a very long, cumbersome thing that we have to do for each and every building. So I tried to do it, and I did not. So, and the deadline every day is 3 p.m. every day for every school, not for the district. So I tried to do it. They extended the deadline today till 5 o'clock because they just told us today. And like most of my colleagues, I attempted it and I tried submitting, but it's all required fields, and I just kept trying to submit, and it didn't go through. But I honestly did not have a minute today to even, it's a lot of data that we don't just have at our fingertips. Because I can't say, I knew we did sign in, so I know today, like staff was remote, but on a normal day, for us to be able to know who was in and out will require us to do a complete attendance audit daily, which we do and we can do, but it's not an easy just fill it in type of dashboard. They're expecting us to fill in everything. And the explanation is that the data they collect from schools will then be triangulated with the data they collect from local health departments, and then it'll be accessible and viewable. So you will have community members, and the governor told all of you hearing it today was how I was hearing it, by the way. That's how we were informed. After he spoke, we got this urgent thing for superintendents to go on to this web conference. And it's a busy day, it's a busy time, which is not a complaint, it just is a fact. It's very cumbersome, I felt, and we have to sort out how it's going to be done. Yes, that's true. It will be a searchable database, so someone can log into the COVID dashboard. It's like the school report. It's COVID report card that we have to update daily. Which there's very few things we do daily, by the way. Almost everything is no.
That speaks to the fact that no one in Albany understands how schools work. Exactly.
They would expect us on Monday and Tuesday to say that we're hybrid, and then on Wednesdays to say that we're fully remote. I mean, for the high school, but not for CLS. I mean, it's a lot.
And I understand the need for data at times, but, knowing that we're not testing, it's not, the information isn't accurate.
Right.
Or it will be double reported if they've reported it through their doctor, so it really,
That
why
is
can't they
correct.
just do weekly if they want to know how many kids are coming in, that's fine, but maybe that's something our lawmakers could help us with.
I will say that it has created quite a stir among superintendents. I mean, I'm on the listserv. It was like the email was like 2-3 pages of everybody saying, I couldn't submit today. I couldn't submit.
Mark, is the task force with Sue Serino still meeting occasionally?
Yes.
So,
And she said in a meeting I was at a few weeks ago that, if there's any questions that we can't get answered from somebody, please reach out to her office. She's more than happy to try to get answers for us. So, I think that's
Could
really
use her help
important.
then.
A resource.
This is statewide, though the earth shook today because we were just ready to get things going, and then it was like this on top of it, I think was the straw. I was like, oh my gosh.
sorry I asked, but I had to ask because I was like, I heard it, and then I was like, that doesn't make any sense, and maybe they were talking about colleges.
No, you heard it. You heard it at the same time. Like schools being closed in March, we're hearing it the same time parents are hearing it. And so, in the community, and I understand this, the governor said that you'll be able to log in. People will be expected to log in and see accurate data, and we have to submit it daily. So we will figure out how to make that happen, but it is a whole additional area of reporting.
Funded. Mark, did you have something else?
Yeah, so I just want to add that, I work in healthcare and my office is in a nursing home, and this is not limited to school districts. I mean, this is the stuff that goes on throughout the state, throughout all the industries that they regulate, and, it's just ridiculous.
Well, at least
that
you guys are
they
testing
continue to do what they
nursing
haven't learned from their previous mistakes, so,
They haven't made any mistakes.
No, I know.
What are you talking about?
I know.
Okay,
That's all I'm gonna say
any
about
other? All right, we're going to move on to our action items. Anybody like to move anything from the consent agenda? Okay. Can I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following consent items?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Tina Mazzone to the part-time position of science teacher, living environment, assigned to Rhinebeck High School, effective September 8th, 2020, at a salary of Step 1 MA $62,625 prorated, in accordance with the 2020-21 RTA salary schedule. This position is a partial replacement of the vacancy created by the retirement of Amy Christie.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Welcome, Tina, to our staff. All those in favor? Passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to designate Mark Fleischauer as district delegate and an alternate delegate to be decided to exercise their judgment as necessary to represent the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education in voting on proposed bylaw amendments and resolutions at the 2020
Sorry.
NISBA Convention and Education Expo.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mark,
You're welcome.
for volunteering to do that. If anybody wants to volunteer to be the delegate, the alternate, speak up. Mark never misses, so it's an easy job to take. But let me know if you want to do that. All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a request from Patty Daneman, BMS RHS science teacher, for an unpaid leave for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Samantha Casada as a one-year leave replacement, BMS RHS science teacher for the 2020-21 school year, at a salary of Step 1 MA +1 $62,710 in accordance with the 2020-21 RTA salary schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Again, we welcome Samantha. Yeah?
I just had a question, which I don't know if it goes to executive or table it or what, but just about the pending certification.
So
Is that an easy answer, or does that need to be?
really
I apologize for not doing
It's more
it.
of an executive session, so if you want to table the, we'll talk about it in executive session.
So,
So you just make a motion.
motion to table.
Second.
All those in favor of tabling item 7.5? Okay, that item's tabled. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a request from Mary Ann Kitis, CLS monitor, for an unpaid leave for the 2020-21 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a request from Deborah Vienzia, BMS aide, for an unpaid leave from September 8th, 2020 through September 18th, 2020 as a result of the New York State DOH travel advisory regarding volunteer travel to restricted states.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request from Shannon Denise, with such leave to be taken as paid leave under the Federal Emergency FMLA Expansion Act as part of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA, from September 16th, 2020 through October 30th, 2020, or thereabout.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion passes. And motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept a donation of milk crates for each student at CLS to store personal belongings at their desk valued at $2,100 from the Rhinebeck PTSO.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? We thank the PTSO for their donation. All those in favor? Motion passes. And can I have a motion to move an executive session to discuss contract negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor? Motion passes.